Development Pharmaceuticals in association with Higher Secondary Principals Forum.
Hello students, welcome to the class of Secretarial Practice. In 12th standard, we are talking about the secretarial correspondence with the different agencies. Secretarial correspondence with the members of the company, secretarial correspondence with the directors of the company, secretarial correspondence with the different government agencies, banks, insurance companies, the registrar of the cooperative societies, the stock exchanges. When we talk about the role of the secretary, it is basically secretary is an administrative officer of the company. He is called as a PRO of the company, public relation officer of the company. And as a public relation officer, secretary has to be in contact with the different government agencies. Secretary has to make correspondence with the different government agencies and the other agencies which are required for the smooth functioning of the companies. Well, there is one friend of mine, Mr. Joseph, who is in the hotel industry, and due to the pandemic situation and the lockdown, his business is totally down. He cannot do his business. He is having the tourist vehicle. Few days back, I had seen him in the bank, and while having the conversation with him, I found out that he got a notice from the bank asking to pay 6 months installments which are due. Actually, the bank has said, or the government has said that 6 months the installments will be waived up. But now, after the completion of the 6 months, all these people who have not paid the installment of loan for the last 6 months, they got the notices from the bank saying to pay these due installments which they have not paid. Now, while having a conversation with this friend of mine, Mr. Joseph, I asked him what is the problem. He said for the last 6 months there is no business, and till today this industry has not started and nobody knows how long this problem will exist. So when he spoke the same problem to the bank manager said, if you have a problem in paying the installments, you just give in writing. Write a letter to the bank manager saying, I cannot pay this bank installments for another few months because of no business. Because the hotel industry is totally collapsed. And as per the instructions of the bank manager, he wrote one application, he wrote one letter to the bank manager requesting not to demand for this due installments right now at this situation and even for another few months. So this is called as Joseph correspondence with the bank. Joseph made a correspondence with the bank requesting the banker not to demand for this due installments till the pandemic is over or till this situation comes to an end. So this is called as the correspondence with the bank. Similarly, in the companies, as I said, secretary is an administrative officer of the company. Secretary has to make many times correspondence with the banker. Maybe for opening the bank account of the company, maybe for asking or requesting the bank balance of the company, maybe for the stop payment of the check. Many times secretary will have to write letters to the bank manager for the different circumstances according to the requirement of the bank. And this is called as secretarial correspondence with the bank. So today we'll be talking about the secretarial correspondence with the bank. Now, before we talk about in what circumstances secretary makes correspondence with the bank, or which are the different situations where secretary has to communicate with the bank. We will first talk about the bank. What is a bank? And what is the functioning of the bank? And where does the role of the secretary arises in the banking sector? The teaching objectives of this lesson will be the meaning, knowing what is meant by bank, knowing the different types of the banks which are operating in the banking sector, knowing the different types of the accounts, the deposits that the banks accept, different types of the lendings, loans and the advances bank give to the needy people. You will be also learning the different types of the checks, that is the negotiable instrument, that is a check, different types of the checks and the demand draft, and also the most modern, the latest development in the banking sector, that is e-banking, that is called as a electronic banking. So this will be the teaching objectives for this today's lesson. Let's move on to the bank. When we talk about the banking, or when we talk about the bank, it has been always said that the most important resource for the survival of any business organization or any non-business organization is the finance, money, funds that we talk about. Money plays a very important role in the banking sector or in the business organization. Even if it is a business organization or a non-business organization, finance is required. Finance is called as a backbone of the business enterprises. Finance is called as a backbone of the associations, organizations. Even if there are so many non-profit organizations, like the youth associations, like sports clubs, cultural clubs, many non-profit associations, but still to carry out the activities, you require money, you require finance, you require funds. So funds plays a very important role in the organization. For the development of the trade, for the development of the industry, there is a role of the finance, there is role of funds. Banks plays very important role in the economic development of the country. Today, because of the development in the banking sector, you could see development in the economy of the country. These banks are accepting the deposits, and the same money that is accepted from the people in form of the deposits is given to the needy people in form of the loans and advances. Bank never uses its own money. Those people who uses their own money for giving loans and advances, they are not called as banks. They cannot be called as bank. They can be called as a money lenders because they use their own money and they give loans and advances to the people and they charge interest on these loans and advances. So when we are talking about the bank always speaks about accepting for the purpose of lending, which means bank talks about accepting the money from the people under the different heads of accounts, and the same money which is accepted from the people under the different heads of account is then given to the needy people in form of the loans and advances. And that is called as bank. That is the definition of the bank. Banks are given permission by the government to accept deposits. Banks can accept deposits. Bank also have the permission of clearing of the checks. Banks also have the permission of charging the interest on the loans and the advances. And banks also has the permission from the government to pay interest on the deposits that they accept from the deposit holders. And this is called as a bank. Today, bank plays a very important role. Banks have a very significant role to play in the economy of our country and the economies of even the developed nations of the world. These banks are involved in providing all possible support to the businessmen, to the industrial owners, to the small scale industries, to the individuals, to the salary holders, and everybody get the help from the banks in order to cater to the financial needs of these people, in order to fulfill the financial needs of these people. And that is the most important role of the banks. Now, there are different types of the banks, depending upon what exactly they do in the money market, what exactly they do in the society, what is the role of these banks in the society. Accordingly, they are called in the different names because their role differs from each other. The role of each of these banks differs from each other, and that's why there are the classifications of the bank. So let's talk about the classifications, the types of the bank. There are different types of the banks that we will speak. When we talk about the banks, bank has some important function, two major functions of the bank. That is accepting of the deposits, and that is which is called as a borrowing and lending of the money. If you want to say confidently that a financial institution is a bank, then these two basic functions has to be performed by the bankers. That is accepting of the deposits, taking the money from the people in form of the deposits, and the same money which is accepted from the people in form of the deposits is given to the needy people in form of the loans and advances. So these are the two major functions of the banks, that is borrowing of the money and lending of the money. Then only a bank will be called as a bank according to the Banking Regulation Act 1949. So to know more about and more types of the banks, let's move on to the types of the banks. There are different types of the banks depending upon what exactly they do in the society. What is the role of these banks in the society? First, we will talk about the Reserve Bank of India. Reserve Bank of India is the central bank of our country. Almost all the countries in the world, they have their central bank. Central bank of the country means the apex bank from that particular country, the topmost bank of that particular country, the bankers bank in that particular country, the government bank of that particular country, and that is called as a central bank of the country. For an example, you talk about the Bank of England, which is a central bank of England. You talk about the Bank of Afghanistan, which is a central bank of the Afghanistan. You talk about the Bank of Australia, which is a central bank of Australia. Like this, every country has the apex bank of their country, the topmost bank of the country, the bank which has the power to print currency notes, the bank which has the power to circulate currency notes, the bank which has the power to destroy currency notes if they are not in a circulation position, or destroy the coins if they are not in a good position. That is the power of the central bank. So the central bank of India, the central bank of our country is the Reserve Bank of India. It has been said in term as the central bank of a country. It performs all those traditional functions, all the traditional functions which a central bank of any country should perform, and that is called as the RBI or the Reserve Bank of India. Let's talk about the functions of the Reserve Bank of India. It has been said, first thing, it talks about the monetary authority, which means the Reserve Bank of India is controlling the monetary policy of our country. If any monetary policy has to be decided, then it is the responsibility, it is the power of the Reserve Bank of India. You must have heard about the demonetization on 2 years back on 8th of November. Demonetization, this talks about the monetary policy. So when the Reserve Bank of India has decided to demonetize the currency of the country, I think if I'm not wrong, 1,000 rupee notes and the 500 rupee notes were demonetized overnight, and that is the policy of the that is the policy, monetary policy of the Reserve Bank of India. Even though the government may announce it, but the policy has to be done and passed by the central bank of the country. So to have a control over the monetary authority, to have a control over the monetary policies of the country, it is the most important function of the Reserve Bank of India. Second, manager of the foreign exchange. Another important Reserve Bank of India performs is managing the foreign exchange of our country. It has to see about the management of the Foreign Exchange Act 1999. According to this particular act, what are the provisions of the foreign exchange? What are the provisions of the exchanging of the foreign currency, deciding the rates of the foreign currency? Everything will be looked after by the Reserve Bank of India. That is the function. That is another important function. It cannot be handed over to any other bank. It is the power of the Reserve Bank of India. Reserve Bank of India should look after this. Reserve Bank of India should manage the foreign exchange rates, should manage the foreign exchange policies, should manage the foreign exchange rules and regulations. So that is the power of the Reserve Bank of India. Issue of currency notes. Just now I spoke about the issuing of the currency notes. The sole bank which has the right to print the currency notes in India is the Reserve Bank of India. If anybody else is printing the currency notes, that currency note cannot be called as a legal currency of the country. Only the currency which is printed, authorized to print the currency of India is Reserve Bank of India. No one has the right to print the currency notes. And the record of each and every note which has been printed is with the Reserve Bank of India. That is the response. That is another function of the Reserve Bank of India, of printing the currency notes, circulating the currencies of the country, destroying the currency of the country. It's a responsibility, it's a function of the Reserve Bank of India. Next, Bank of the government. Another important function, role of the Reserve Bank of India, it acts as a government bank. If, say, for example, government bonds has to be issued to raise the funds, because many times government is in the financial crisis, like in the present situation, government is in a huge financial crisis. So in this case, if the government wants to raise money from the public and government wants to issue bonds to the public, then the Reserve Bank of India will act on behalf of the government. Government will not directly approach the people, will not directly appeal the people to invest their money in the bonds of the government. But government will appoint Reserve Bank of India, and the Reserve Bank of India will act as a bank for the government. And on behalf of the government, Reserve Bank of India will appeal people, will issue bonds to raise money from the people. So it acts as a government bank, banker to the government. And the next function which has been performed by the Reserve Bank of India is bankers to the bank. If any bank is in financial crisis, they approach Reserve Bank of India. Reserve Bank of India provides financial support to them. If there are any financial problems to any of the bank, then the control, management of those banks will be decided by the Reserve Bank of India. Nowadays, you must have heard, you must have seen about the merging of the different banks. No bank in India can merge on their own without taking the permission from the Reserve Bank of India. It is the Reserve Bank of India which will permit them to merge among themselves, and then only they can start with the merger of the banks. And there are some rules and regulations. There are some policies which has to be passed, and then only it could be done. You must have heard about the Mapsa Urban Cooperative Bank, which is a bank of Goa. The recent happenings, this bank has been closed down by the order of the Reserve Bank of India. Because whenever any misappropriation, misuse of the funds has been done in any of the banks, the Reserve Bank of India has a full power to interfere in the day-to-day functioning of the bank and take the necessary steps to protect the interest of the customers, to protect the interest of the members of the company. And that's why banks, in times of the problems, bank is there with the other scheduled and the other nationalized banks, and in times of problems to safeguard the interest of the members and the customers of the customers, bank will also take necessary actions on the bank. So these are some important functions of the banks, important function of the Reserve Bank of India. This is the topmost bank of our country. This is the apex bank of our country. This is the bank which controls all the other banks in our country. Let's talk about the next bank, which is called as a industrial bank. When we talk about the industry, industry is something which is related to the business. And from the name itself, it indicates that a bank which is involved in the promotion and the development of the industrial sector is called as a industrial bank. So this is the bank which is involved in the promotion, in the development of the industrial sector, because it has also been said that industry is the backbone of any developed nation of the world. Industry is the backbone of any developed nation of the world, and because of that, industrial banks perform a very big role, a very significant role in the development of the country, in the development of the economy of the country. So it is basically involved in providing financial support to the industrial sector. It might be the small scale industry, it might be the medium scale industries, or it might be the large scale industries. So what are the features of these industrial banks? First thing, it is also known as the development banks. Development bank because this industrial bank works for the development of the country by developing the industrial sector of the country, because there is a big portion of the population which depends upon the industries. It might be because of the employment purpose. There can be some people who are supplying some raw materials or other resources to the industries, or there can be other ways through which a big proportion of the population depends upon the industrial sector. And that's why industries are called, or industrial bank is also called as a development bank, because it works in the development of the country. It works in the development of the people. It works in the development of the large portion of the population of the country. Next talks about the issue of shares and debentures. Industrial banks also issues shares to the people and the debentures to the people in order to raise its funds. So the management is in the hands of the people, which means people are buying the shares of the company. People are investing their money in the shares of the company. You can make people members of these banks. You can make people shareholders of these banks. And also, you can raise money from the people as the investors in form of inviting them to invest their money in the debentures of the company. So, the money is raised from the people by issuing shares and debentures. That is called as an industrial bank. Third comes is about it provide long-term loans to the industrial sector. You know, there are many industries which wants to invest their money in the long-term assets of the company. Take an example. If you want to build a building for setting up of the industry, setting up a factory, then the repayment of these loans cannot be in 3 years or in 5 years. You require a long term for the repayment of these loans. If you are buying machineries, a huge technology costing crores of rupees, and you require loans from the industrial banks, then in this case, you will not able to repay these loans in a short period of time. And that's why these loans are taken by the bank, by the companies for a long period of time. So these banks provide long-term loans to the industrial sector. Provide a finance for large-scale business organizations. If there are so many MNCs, multinational companies in the world who requires huge amount of capital, thousands of crores of rupees. So these industrial sectors are also ready to fund these huge business houses, these huge business organizations. But one thing is very important, that the due care must be taken while sanctioning the loans to these big business houses. Say for an example of Kingfisher Airlines, huge loans were given by the banks. but the management of these loans were not being supervised. It is also equally important when you sanction loans in a huge amount of money to the big business houses, it is also essential that you supervise the management of these loans, the utilization of these loans. Unfortunately, many times many banks does not do this, and that's why the recovery of some type of the loans are not possible. But this is another important feature of the industrial bank. Next comes is about the commercial bank. From the name itself, it indicates that it is the bank which promote commerce, which is involved in development of the commerce. Anybody who is involved in the commercial activities, these banks grant them loans, these banks give them advances, and the money is accepted in form of the shares and the debentures from the people. Also, the funds are taken from the Reserve Bank of India, which is called as a commercial bank. These commercial banks are registered under the Companies Act 1956 and latest act, Companies Act 2013. So these banks are called as a nationalized bank. We have the different examples of these banks, like State Bank of India, or you talk about the Bank of Baroda, you talk about the Canara Bank. These are the nationalized banks which are being registered with the government, work under the control and the management or the supervision of the government, which are called as a commercial banks. So let's try to know something more about the commercial banks. It has been said commercial bank accepts deposits from the public. You talk about just now, I gave you some examples of these banks. They can accept the deposits from the people under the different heads of account. They have the different heads of accounts like saving bank account, current account, fixed deposit account. They have the recurring deposit account. Under this different heads of account, they accept the deposits from the people. And same money which has been used or taken from the public under the different heads of account, same money is given back to the needy people in form of the loans and advances. There may be somebody who want to start a small business, maybe a small restaurant, and they are in need of money. This money, by following the different formalities and doing the different documentation, money is given to these people at a fixed rate of interest. Always the rate of interest which has been charged on the loans is higher than the rate of interest which is paid on the deposits. And the difference between this is the profit margin of the banks. Because when the banks are accepting the deposits, they pay interest to the deposit holders. It might be, say, for example, 6%. But when the banks are giving loans to the people, they are charging interest on these loans, which might be 10% of the interest. The 4%, that is the difference between the interest charged and the interest paid, is the profit margin of the banks, and on which the management of the bank has been done, the operation of the bank has been done. So accepting of the deposit is one important function of the commercial bank. Providing loans and advances. I said just now, whatever money is accepted by the banks under the different heads of account is again given back to the needy people, needy businessmen, individuals, in form of the loans and advances. There can be housing loans, there can be business loans, there can be loans for buying of the vehicles, there can be loans for renovation of the house. Different types of the loans are there, which has been sanctioned by the banks, which under the different heads. Credit creations, another important thing is credit creations. This banks create the credits, which means it accept the deposits under the different heads of account. Same money which has been accepted is given back to the needy people, where the credit is been created. Now, by doing this business, the credit is been created. If, say, for example, they are only accepting the money and not giving it to the people, no, they are investing it somewhere else, we will say it is not a bank, it cannot be a bank. So definition of the bank itself says accepting for the purpose of lending, very clearly explained. Next comes is agency functions. Banks does not only accept the deposits and give loans and advances, but at the same time, in order to attract more and more customers, it works as an agent of the customer, like paying of the electricity bills on behalf of the customers, paying of the telephone bills on behalf of the customers, sometimes even paying the rent of the houses on behalf of the customers, paying of the the insurance premium on behalf of the customer, paying of the installments of the other banks on behalf of the customer. So the bank is acting as an agent on behalf of the customer. So as per the standing instructions of the customer, bank pays some fees, some charges or some bills on behalf of the customer, and that's why bank is also called as an agent of the customer. Next talks about general utility functions. In order to attract more and more customers, in order to attract more and more deposit holders, bank also perform additional functions which are called as a general utility functions, which might be in form of issuing the traveler check to the customers, providing the locker facilities to the customers, even providing the plastic cards, that is, you may talk about the ATM card, debit card or credit card, all these cards. These are the facilities given by the bankers in order to attract more and more customers to them, which are called as a general utility functions, which may differ from bank to the bank. It might not be same to all the banks, which may differ from bank to the bank, but in order to attract more and more customers towards them, different general utility functions are also been provided to the customers. These are the functions of the commercial banks. These are the functions of the commercial bank. Next talks about cooperative bank, another banking sector in India. Today people have realized the importance of the cooperation. The main important aim and objective of the cooperation is doing something with the help of others, something that you cannot do on your own, and that is called as a cooperation. That is called as bringing people together in order to do something which you cannot do in your own individual isolated actions, and that's why you are joining hands with somebody else to fulfill your own needs. And that is called as a cooperation. So cooperation is playing a very significant role in India and even in the other parts of the world. The cooperative movement actually started in 1904, actually developed in 1912, when the act has been passed by the government in 1912 in order to promote and develop the cooperative movement in India. Cooperatives are playing a very important role. Cooperative does not exist only in the banking sector, but cooperative is existing among the farmers. There are the farmer cooperative societies. There are the bus owners cooperative societies. There are the government employees cooperative societies. There are housing cooperative societies. So it is not restricted only in the banking sector today, but the people have realized the importance of the cooperative sector in each and every field in which they work, and that's why cooperations or the cooperative movement is an helping hand to each and every individual, individual who cannot afford to fulfill his own or her own needs on his own individual isolated action, and that's why hands are being joined with others in order to fulfill the needs of the people. And the same ideology, same principle is been followed in the cooperative bank. Cooperative bank is a voluntary association of the individuals to fulfill their financial needs. There might be some people who is in need of the finance, who is in need of the funds. If you go to the nationalized bank, the formalities, the documentation is very difficult, and that's why people like this who are having the same problems, minimum 10 people can come together, they can form their association, they can get it registered with the cooperative registrar under the Cooperative Societies Act, and you can call it as your cooperative society or a cooperative bank. The cooperative bank status you will get it after completing certain formalities, but initially you can call it as a cooperative society to fulfill your own needs, and that is called as a cooperative bank. This cooperative bank operates as a three-tier structure. It operates as a three-tier structure. Okay, so let's talk about the features of the cooperative bank. When we talk about the cooperative bank always operate on the principle of cooperation, which means the members of the cooperative bank, the shareholders of the cooperative bank, they cooperate together in order to fulfill their own needs, and that is called as cooperation. So that is the one most important feature of the banks. Second is the state cooperative banks have the financial access to the reserve bank, I have told you earlier that the cooperative banks operates as a three-tier structure. Three-tier structure, T-I-E-R. Three-tier structure, which means there are the cooperatives at the village level, which are called as a primary cooperative banks. There are the cooperatives operating at the district level, which are called as a district cooperative banks, and there are the cooperatives which are operating at the state level, which is the apex cooperative bank of that state, which is the topmost cooperative bank of that state, and which is called as a state cooperative bank. Like we have a Goa State Cooperative Bank in Goa, which is the only apex bank, cooperative bank of Goa. You cannot have more than 2 apex cooperative banks in a state. Likewise, in Maharashtra, there is a Maharashtra State Cooperative Bank, which is the apex cooperative bank of that particular state. So you cannot have more than 1 apex cooperative bank. So there it operates as a three-tier structure at the village level, at the district level, and at the state level. And this cooperative bank, that is the state cooperative bank, is the only bank which has a direct financial access with the Reserve Bank of India. If tomorrow in that particular state, if any of the cooperative bank is in need of the financial support, it is the state cooperative bank which will approach the Reserve Bank of India. District cooperative bank cannot go to the Reserve Bank of India. District cooperative bank will have to approach the Goa State Cooperative Bank, and the Goa State Cooperative Bank will approach the Reserve Bank of India for the financial support. Okay, so that's another thing. Credit facilities are available to farmers, salaried class, and also to the small scale industries. Basically, when we talk about the cooperative sector and the cooperative bank, it is the bank which is formed in order to promote the small scale farmers. It is formed to promote the small scale industries and the salaried people, those people who have a small income, and that is the main objective of the cooperative bank. So here they provide financial support to this sector of the people. Next comes, it is a three-tier structure, I have already said. At the village level, at the district level, and at the state level. That is called as a cooperative bank, which plays a very significant role in the development of a particular state. Next comes is about the Land Development Bank, another important bank which works in the development of the agricultural sector. If we try to make a survey and if we try to collect the information, the maximum proportion of our population is depending on the agriculture, and that's why there is a need of the development, growth of the agricultural sector in order to support these farmers, in order to protect the interest of these farmers, and that is the role of the land development banks. These land development banks, as we have said, it is working in the development of the agricultural plots in order to provide financial support to the farmers to develop the agricultural plots. Sometimes the loans are also been provided, term loans it has been called as, for a short period of time, where the loans are given in order to buy seeds or the manures, that is the fertilizers, to buy the machineries. No, this type of the facilities are being given by the agricultural banks, or they are also called as a land development banks. If you try to see, the main and the most important objective of this bank is the promotion of the agricultural sector, providing support to the farmers, providing support to the agriculturist for buying the machineries, for making improvement or the permanent improvement in the agricultural plots, for digging of the wells or connecting the fields with the water canals. For all this you require money. And this type of the investment might be a long-term investment. So this type of the funds and the financial support is also given by this agricultural or the land development banks. Finance to the agricultural sector. The most important feature characteristic of this bank is providing the finance to the agricultural sector, development of the agricultural sector, provide help in land development. Just now I said that maybe in the development of the plots of land, agricultural plots of land, which requires sometimes the huge investment. The barren land, you want to convert it into the agricultural land. You require machineries there, you require other investment, the huge machineries, the latest modern machineries are required for making this development. So these loans are being provided by the land development banks, taking assistance from the government. Many times what happens, there are many schemes of the government. Must be aware about the latest scheme which has been announced by the central government is Atmanirbhar Yojana, through which for the development of the agriculture, to make changes in the agricultural plots, some financial support is been given by the central government. Now the farmers cannot go directly approach the government offices at the central or at the central government. So you require some connecting agency, and that is the role of this land development banks. Through this agency, you can get the facilities, you can get the schemes, you can avail these schemes for the development of the farmers. So this has been done by the land development banks, responsible for the development growth of the agricultural sector. I have said it earlier in the first phase that the maximum portion of the Indian population is depending on the agriculture. Most of the villages are depending on the agriculture. So it has always been said, if the villages are developed, the country can develop in its actual sense. And that's why the concentration has to be done on the villagers, the village population, that population which is depending on the agriculture. If there is an upliftment of this population of the country, if the proper facilities are provided to this population of the country, then the development of the country is very easier and it could be very quick. And that is the reason the development, the growth of the agricultural sector is must. If we are talking about the Atmanirbhar, or if we are talking about the self-dependence, then the development, growth of the farmers comes first. If that happens, then you can very easily be self-dependent in any other sections of the society. So that comes from, this is the role performed by the the land development banks, Next comes is an exchange bank, another bank which has a big role to play in today's economy. You must be aware that after the introduction of the new industrial policy in 1991, the different reforms took place in the economy. There was a privatization where more role is given to the private sectors. There was a liberalization, which means the policies and the formalities, documentation was made liberally, easy and simple to the people to start the businesses. And also there was a globalization, which means the whole world was made into the one single global village. The markets were open to everybody. Anybody who is interested to make the trade between the boundaries of the countries was possible after the introduction of the new industrial policy in 1991. And today we are experiencing this situation. Today we are living in this situation where the whole world has been open to every trader. You can produce goods in one corner of the world, you can make it available in another corner of the world, and you can sell it in another corner of the world. This is possible because of the new industrial policy. And this has given rise to the role of the exchange banks. The role of the exchange banks has started here where the international trade has increased. So what is the role of the the exchange banks? Exchange banks are financing the international trade and provide valuable services to the international traders. It is also involved in the international monetary transactions, which means in order to provide help to the traders who are involved in the international market, in order to support the traders who are involved in the international market, there comes the role of the exchange banks. Exchange banks are helping the international traders, maybe in entering into a trade transactions, issuing the letter of credit, or maybe doing some documentation, doing some formalities. There the role comes of the exchange bank. Next comes about the features of the exchange bank. What does the exchange bank does? It obtains the licenses from RBI under the Foreign Exchange Management Act 1999, which means the licenses which are required for the traders to have a monetary transactions at the international level, because when you are making the monetary transactions at the international level, you require a permission from the Reserve Bank of India, the central bank of that country. You cannot decide it at your level or at the level of the bank which is your bank in which you have an account. You cannot do that. You require a special permission from the Reserve Bank of India. So that has been done by this particular bank. Provide help to the international traders, which means providing help, whatever way, maybe licensing, maybe doing some documentation, maybe the clearing of the goods, for any purpose, whatever help required for the traders who are involved in the international business, this banks helps them. Remit money from one country to another country, which means transferring. Remit means transfer. Transferring of the money from one country to another country. When the buyer buys goods from a foreign trader, he has to make the payment to that trader. So transferring that money from one country to another country, it's a role of the exchange bank. Exchange bank does this, of transferring money from one country to another country in case of the trade between the boundaries of the country. Issue of letter of credit on behalf of the importer. Issuing the letter of credit, because whenever a buyer from the home country is buying goods from the foreign country, you don't make the payment in advance, but you give a letter of credit. Letter of credit is a letter which speaks about the credit worthiness of this customer. A bank from the home country issues this letter, which is called as an importing bank, issues a letter to the party in the foreign country, guaranteeing the foreign country that after you deliver your goods and after this person in the home country receives the delivery of the goods, you will get the payment, and this is my guarantee. Bank gives the guarantee, and this letter of credit is been issued by the exchange bank. Very important. Because without the letter of guarantee or without the letter of credit, nobody from the foreign country will be willing to sell goods to any of the customers, because you don't know them. You have nothing to do with them. So you don't have any context. You don't know what is the credit worthiness of this party. So to speak about or to guarantee about the credit worthiness of the party, a letter has been issued by the bank, and that is called as a letter of credit. So this is issued by the exchange bank. Discounting of the bills of exchange means encashment of the bills before the due date. It has been done by the exchange banks. This is another role of the exchange banks. So this is what the exchange bank does. Promote the international trade between the boundaries of the countries, and that's called as a exchange bank. Next comes is about the distinction between the commercial bank and the Reserve Bank of India. Many times people, even the educated people, they get confused with the commercial bank and the Reserve Bank of India. There is difference between the commercial banks and the Reserve Bank of India. First is meaning. Meaning, commercial bank is a bank which has been registered under the Indian Companies Act 1956 and which is called as a nationalized bank of the country. Reserve Bank of India is the topmost bank of the country. Topmost bank of the country, registered in 1935 and which is called as a banker's bank in the country, which has the power to print the currency notes. So that is a Reserve Bank of India. Issuing of the licenses. Commercial bank does not have the right to issue the licenses to any of the banks to start a new branch or to start a new bank. Commercial bank does not have the power to issue licenses. But the Reserve Bank of India has the power to issue the licenses to start a new branch or a new bank. Reserve Bank of India has the power to issue licenses. Next comes the lender of the last resort. Commercial bank is not the lender of the last resort, which means if any bank is in the financial crisis, commercial bank cannot provide them the financial support. But the Reserve Bank of India is the lender of the last resort. If everything gets over, it's the Reserve Bank of India which will make the provision of the funds and provide the funds to the banks. Next comes the issue of currency. Commercial bank does not have the right to print the currency notes. Reserve Bank of India, yes, it has a right to print the currency notes. Next comes the credit control. All the credit policies are not controlled by the commercial banks. Commercial banks does not have the power to control the credit of the different banks. It is the Reserve Bank of India which can control the credit of all the banks in the country, whether to merge the bank, whether to close the bank, whether to promote the bank. It is in the hands of the Reserve Bank of India. So that's about the different types of the banks and the major distinction between the commercial banks and the Reserve Bank of India. Yes, then comes the types of the account. These banks that we have spoken, they accept the deposits. I have said it earlier. Every bank accepts the deposits under the different heads of account, and the same money which is accepted is given to the needy people in form of the loans and advances. So let's talk about the types of the accounts. Basically, there are two heads of the accounts. That is, one is called as a demand deposits, and another one is called as a time deposits. Demand deposits means the deposits which are accepted by the bank, and as the customers demand for it, it has to be returned back to them on the demand of the customers, and that is called as a demand deposits. There are other category of the deposits which are called as a time deposits, which means the deposits which are been accepted by the banker for a fixed period of time, and you cannot return it back before the expiry of the period, before the due date, and that is called as a time deposits, or it is called as a term deposits. Now there are two category of accounts here which comes under the demand deposits. There are two category of accounts which comes under the time deposits. Here comes the current account. Current account is called as an account of the businessman. An account which is most suitable for the businessman is called as a current account. You can open this account with a minimum balance of rupees 500, depends upon the bank's minimum. In scheduled banks is 500, in some of the private banks it is even 5,000. If you talk about the HDFC, it is 5,000 rupees to open a current account. You get a checkbook facility to make and receive the payments. Very small rate of interest is been paid here. Very small rate of interest. Negligible rate of interest is paid in the current accounts. At the same time, there are no restrictions on the deposits and withdrawals under this particular account, which is called as a current account. No restriction. Per day, you can deposit your money 100 number of times. Per day, you can withdraw money 100 number of times. No restrictions here. And that's why in current account, since it is a businessman account, money comes and goes very fast in the current account, because the businessmen never keep money idle. Businessmen utilize the money. And that's why this money which has been utilized quite often, quite frequently, since the money does not remain in the account, interest is not paid to the account holders, since it is a businessman account. And this is called as a current account. It is a demand deposit, because as the any customer comes to the bank with the demand, money is paid back to that customer, and that's why it is called as a demand deposits. That is a current account. Another demand deposit is a saving account. It is a most commonly used, very popular type of the account, which is most suitable for the poor and the middle section of the society, mostly to the salaried holders or to the daily wage earners. Here again, there are no restrictions on the deposits and the withdrawals in this particular account. You are given the checkbook facility, you are given the ATM facility, you are allowed to withdraw and deposit your money any number of times. Here the passbook is given to you, you are given a withdrawal slip to withdraw the money, and that is called as a saving bank account. The most convenient account for all the different types of the deposit holders, and it is called as a saving. It is an account which inculcates the habit of saving among the poor section of the society. It is an account which inculcates the habit of saving among the middle section of the society, and that's why it is the most convenient type of the account, which is called as a saving bank account. Again, it is a demand deposit, because when you have a deposit in your account, you go with the check to the bank. On your demand, bank has to pay you the money, and that's why it is called as a demand deposit. It is not for a fixed period of time. Whenever you are in need of the money, you go to the bank, you demand on the counter of the bank, saying that I want 10,000 rupees according to my check, or according to my withdrawal slip, or according to my requisition which I have put. in the ATM, automated teller machine, for 1000 rupees, you should get it because it is your demand deposit. You can withdraw your money any number of times according to your requirements, and that's why it is called as a saving bank account. The next account is a fixed deposit account. This is the account which is most suitable for the idle cash. The money that is unutilized with you, the money which is idle with you, which you have not used or which you will not use for a longer period of time, you can deposit it with the banker for a fixed period of time, and you will get it back after the expiry of the period. The period varies from 45 days to any number of years. Minimum period is 45 days. And the rate of interest varies from the period of deposit. The higher the period of deposit, higher will be the rate of interest. Means if you are depositing or taking a fixed deposit for 45 days, your rate of interest may be 6.5%. But say for example, you have deposited money for 5 years, the rate of deposit will be 12.5%. Because you are depositing your money for 5 years, which means bank can use your money for a longer period of time, and that's why the rate of interest is higher in the fixed deposit where the period of deposit is higher. And this is called as a fixed deposit, where the highest rate of interest is paid as compared to any other deposit account. And this is called as a fixed deposit account, where you don't have to open any separate account. You just deposit the money in the bank and you are given a certificate which is called as a FDR, that is a fixed deposit receipt. Only that receipt, whenever your period will over, your FD will be matured, on that day you go to the bank only with this particular receipt, on which there will be name of the bank on the top of this receipt. There will be name of the account holder, the amount you have deposited, the interest paid to you, the total amount payable to you in words and the figures, signature of the bank officer, and you produce it, you get the money on the maturity period. But sometimes people are in need of money. Before the expiry of the period, people wants money. You are also allowed to withdraw, but the rate of interest that has been agreed to you for that period will not be paid. There will be penalty. And in the form of the penalty, the rate of interest will be deducted if you are withdrawing your money in fixed deposit account before the expiry of the period. Okay? So that talks about the FDR. And the next comes is a recurring deposit account. Another thing is a recurring deposit account. Means you are opening an account with the fixed amount of money, and the same amount of money you are depositing in the regular intervals. That is called as a recurring deposit account. Maybe you are depositing money once in a week, once in a fortnight, once in a month, once in a quarter, once in a year. Now, this type of the accounts are opened sometime by some of the parents who wants to make a provision of money for the education of their children, or maybe the wedding of their children, or some future plans. They open this type of the account, where an account is opened with a fixed amount of money and the same amount is been deposited in the regular intervals for a fixed period of time. And this is called as a recurring deposit account, where a type of the recurring deposit account which is very popular is a pygmy account, where the bank comes to your doorsteps. You don't have to go to the bank to deposit the money. The bank comes to your doorsteps, bank collect the money from you, bank gives you the receipt, and your money is deposited in the bank. Mostly been open for a period of 1 year. Okay, the pygmy collector comes to your doorstep to collect the money, deposited in the money, and you get a lump sum money after the end of the year along with the interest. And that's called as a pygmy, a type of the recurring deposit account. So, but sometimes some people deposit this money once in a year also for 20 years. They collect the lump sum money along with the interest after 20 years. And this money has been used for some fixed purpose, which what they have in their mind. This is called as a recurring deposit account. So, these are the deposits, accepting of the deposits from the customers. So, these are two types of the deposits. That is the demand deposits, where the deposits are paid back to the customers on their demand, under which comes the current account and the saving account. and the term deposits, which means the deposits which has to be paid back only after the expiry of the period, which can be fixed deposit, fixed deposits are taken maybe for 5 years. And according to the agreement, if you want to get the interest, it should be paid back only on the expiry of the period. Or you talk about the recurring deposit account which is taken for 1 year, the minimum period is 1 year. If you want to complete this, then you can complete it only after the expiry of the 1 year, and that is called as a time deposits. So we have completed this particular session with the types of the deposits, that is the types of the accounts. So we have learned what about the banking, the functions of the banking. We spoke about the different types of the banks depending upon what exactly they do in the society. We also spoke about the different types of the accounts, the deposits which are being accepted by the bankers. And next session, we will continue with the lendings, the negotiable instruments, and the electronic banking. So here I wind up this session, and we will meet in the second session of the correspondence of company secretary with the banks. Thank you.
Prudent Scholars, powered by Lupin Pharmaceuticals.
अब आपकी सुरक्षा आपके हाथों में। ल्यूपी सेफ हैंड सैनिटाइजर, आपका और चेन्नई सुपर किंग्स का फर्स्ट लाइन ऑफ डिफेंस। अब आपकी सुरक्षा आपके हाथों में। ल्यूपी सेफ हैंड सैनिटाइजर, आपका और चेन्नई सुपर किंग्स का फर्स्ट लाइन ऑफ डिफेंस। अब आपकी सुरक्षा आपके हाथों में। ल्यूपी सेफ हैंड सैनिटाइजर, आपका और चेन्नई सुपर किंग्स का फर्स्ट लाइन ऑफ डिफेंस।